Well, welcome to this evening's, yeah, yeah. I call this meeting to order. So welcome to this evening's Committee of Adjustment meeting. Members of the public, applicants, agents, and staff may be participating this evening either in person or virtually via Zoom. For those attending via Zoom, please note that it is our standard practice for members of the public to have their cameras off and microphones muted until it is the time for that member to speak. Township staff can assist with muting microphones. If you require assistance, please use the chat function and ask staff. I am pleased to advise that this is being broadcast live on the township's YouTube channel, where a recording of this meeting will be available. Note that the township does not have the ability to edit the live stream or recorded versions of the meeting. Public meetings have been called and notice circulated in accordance with the Planning Act with respect to applications for minor variance and or consent. The purpose of public meetings are to inform and provide the public with an opportunity to ask questions and express views with respect to the applications. The format of the public meeting is as follows. Township staff will introduce the application and report on all correspondence received. Next, the applicant or their agent will present any relevant information. Township staff will then provide further information and clarify any statements of the applicant and or their agent. Following that, the public will be permitted to ask questions and express views on the proposal, and then the public portion of the meeting will be closed. And finally, members of the committee will be given an opportunity to ask questions for clarification of the application. After all comments have been received, the committee will consider the application with due regard to the presentations and views expressed this evening. The committee will then do one of three things. One, approve the application. Two, deny the application. Or three, defer the application pending receipt of additional information. Specified persons who have provided oral submissions or written objections but disagree with the committee's decision on an application may appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal as entitled under the Planning Act. The deadline for an appeal of consent application is 20 days within the giving of the notice, and for minor variance within 20 days of the decision date. When commenting on an application, please give your full name and address for the minutes. Please note that the names and addresses of those individuals who speak at this meeting will appear within the meeting minutes, which are public documents. If you wish to receive a copy of a decision, please leave your name and address with township staff. So I'm going to go through. So do any members of the committee have any pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Seeing there's none, I'm going to call for a motion for adoption of minutes. I have a motion before us identified as COA 2025-054, moved by member Bossy, second by member Kish, that the minutes for the October 21st, 2025 Committee of Adjustment meeting be adopted as printed and distributed. Call for a vote. All those in favor, we are carried. Going to go on. So would township staff introduce the application and report on any written response to the notice circulated for a new application identified as E1, which is a revised application for minor variance A-03-25.
Thank you, Chair. The first application, as mentioned, is minor variance application A03-25 for the lands located at 157 Brandon Avenue. This application has been before the committee twice before. In this latest edition of this application, it has been revised, and we will get into that as we go through the presentation here. So this revised minor variance application is seeking relief for a reduced interior yard setback, as well as an increased lot coverage, legalizing an existing deck and shed constructed on the subject lands. Originally, this application did also include a minor variance request for a reduced rear yard setback. However, that has since been eliminated. This application was deferred for a second time at the August 2025 committee meeting, pending a receipt of additional information related to the swale on those subject lands. Since that time, a drainage assessment has been provided by the applicants that was prepared by a qualified professional, and it's been reviewed and generally accepted by the township's consulting engineer. I will get into their comments a little bit later in this presentation. The following minor variances are what now are being requested through this. The first being an increased lot coverage of 38.9%, where 35% is permitted by the zoning bylaw, and an interior yard setback of 0.48 meters, where 1.5 meters is required by the bylaw. In terms of correspondence received, the building department advised that there was no objections to the application and that all construction must meet the Ontario Building Code and that a permit would be required for the construction of the deck. The township's consulting engineer, as mentioned, did review the drainage assessment that was prepared by Tatham Engineering on behalf of the property owners. The township's engineer did agree that the rear yard swale had been undisturbed through these works and that it would capture about half of the shed's roof runoff. The 2.1 meter rear yard setback would allow for the snow and any drainage off that roof to occur entirely on the applicant's property, negating any concerns there. And finally, the township's consulting engineer just advised that they were not in objection to any of the minor variances requested from a drainage perspective. There were 4 letters of correspondence received from neighboring property owners, all in support, from 134, 155, 159 Brandon Avenue, as well as 16 Sunset Crescent. Finally, there were no comments or objections received from the clerk's office or the Public Works or Fire and Emergency Services departments on this revised application. I'll just jump into a little bit more on the presentation here as well. The committee is fairly familiar with this, but the subject lands are located here within the Greenwood Landings subdivision in the town of Coldwater. The 2024 aerial imagery, you can see the existing dwelling here. This is in a newer subdivision. So at the time that this imagery was captured, the deck off the rear of the dwelling is not visible. I believe that the shed may be visible here in the imagery, but it is hard to tell given the existing vegetation there. But just for a sense of the subject lands and the neighboring properties as well. This is the site plan that was included in the drainage assessment that the applicant provided. A bit hard to see on screen here, but this rear or interior yard setback at its closest point has been confirmed by the engineer as 0.48 meters, as well as the 2.1 meter rear yard setback, which does comply with the zoning bylaw. And this report also confirms the location of the swale shown by this line here, indicating that the shed at its closest point is 0.52 meters from the swale. And as mentioned, the township's engineer has no concerns with that. Just a couple site photos. You can see the deck off the rear of the dwelling. This is the photo looking down the side property line and with the shed located there in the separation. And then this picture here just looks across the front of the shed. The approximate location of the swale is shown here by this red dashed line. So just as discussed in the staff report in more detail, this application has been revised as a result of updated setback measurements. Township staff are of the opinion that the application is consistent with the provincial planning statement and does meet the 4 tests of a minor variance as required by the Planning Act. And the satisfactory peer review of the drainage assessment have led staff to these conclusions. So for those reasons, staff have no objections to the application subject to the conditions as outlined in attachment 4 of the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you. As this is a new application or revised application, I know we've been here before, Mr. Peer, a couple times. So I think every member here has heard everything that we have. I know that, and we've all read the reports. But if you have anything new that you want to add, I can give you a couple minutes to do that. Or if you're fine with nothing, then we'll just proceed. Perfect. Thank you. So pass it back over to township staff. Do you have anything further to add at all before we proceed?
I would just advise the committee that the recommended conditions for this application are just that the taxes be paid to date, construction be in substantial compliance with the plans submitted with the application, and that the vegetation on the property be preserved and enhanced as much as possible. Thank you. I do have a recommended motion if you'd like to see it.
Okay, perfect. We have nobody participating via Zoom tonight for this application. There are no persons in attendance for this application. So I declare the public portion of the meeting closed. Do any members of the committee require further clarification or wish to provide comments on this application? Seeing none, I'm going to call for a motion. So I have a motion before us. COA 2025-55, moved by member Kish, second by member Hawkins, that staff report D25-037 be received, and that in the matter of minor variance application A-023. What? Oh, A03-25, the revised application be approved subject to the recommended conditions included as attachment 4 to staff report D25-037. And a call for a vote. All those in favor, we are carried. The hearing for this application is now closed. You're free to proceed with your night if you wish to, as we move to the next application. So would township staff introduce the application report on any written response to the notice circulated for E2, which is an application for minor variance identified as A-24-25.
Thank you, Chair. As noted, the next application on the agenda, sorry, that's supposed to be a minor variance application written on the screen. Minor variance application A2425 affecting the lands recognized as 3074 Daniels Lane. The applicant unfortunately could not join us this evening due to a difference in time where they're currently working. So I will do my best to speak to the application and any conditions that are recommended should committee wish to consider approval of the application. For some context, the subject property is currently zoned Shoreline Residential 3 and is currently developed with a single detached dwelling. This application in particular seeks a minor variance to facilitate the construction of a private single-story detached garage. What's unique about this application and of particular importance is that the proposed overall total lot coverage complies with the provisions of the Shoreline Residential 3 zone, as well as all other residential accessory structure provisions. The only minor variance requested is for an increased lot coverage within 60 meters of the shoreline. A maximum lot coverage of 16.58% within 60 meters of the shoreline is requested, where 15 is required. With respect to correspondence received on the application, no public comments were received, and the building department has only stated no objections and that a building permit would be required prior to any construction, and any clearances to the existing sewage system must be met. And no additional comments or objections were received from the clerk, Public Works Department, or Fire and Emergency Services. As shown on screen, the subject property is located along the northern shoreline of McLean Lake. This is just an aerial imagery of the subject property depicting the existing dwelling as well as surrounding development, which does provide some additional context to this application. I can get into that shortly here. So as shown on the screen, the proposed detached garage would be located behind the existing dwelling, a significant setback from the shoreline being greater than 45 meters from the actual shoreline area. As shown on the screen, this type of development is pretty consistent with the type of development we've seen in this area of the township, with a lot of the dwellings having these types of garages to the rear of the properties, as shown on the aerial imagery on the screen. The applicant has provided the attached concept elevations with respect to the proposed garage. Planning staff have reviewed and have confirmed that the proposed detached garage, although it has a dormer, still is considered a single story and satisfies the zoning requirements to maintain a single story, as well as being compliant with all height requirements and size requirements of the zoning bylaw. There's some site photos shown on screen here. So the first photo is a photo of the existing dwelling located on the property, and the same of the existing dwelling viewed from the front. On the last photo here on the screen is where the detached garage would be proposed to be relocated. The temporary structure is understood to be removed as a result of the garage, providing a cleared area for the proposed detached garage to be constructed without resulting in additional removal of vegetation on the property. As outlined in the staff report, it's staff's opinion that the application appears to satisfy the provincial planning statement as well as 4 tests for a minor variance. The proposed structure is compliant with the overall lot coverage and all other applicable provisions for a residential accessory structure, just seeking minor relief for increased lot coverage within 60 meters of the shoreline. The structure does maintain a setback greater than 45 meters from the shoreline. So when I go through the recommended conditions, you'll note that staff are not requiring a development agreement as a condition. This is because it is located greater than that 30 meters from the shoreline, so it would not be appropriate to ask for that type of agreement in this case. But subject to the recommended conditions, planning and development staff have no objections to the provisional approval of the application.
Thank you. The applicant I know is not here, so do township staff have anything further they want to add before we move on?
I can go over the recommended conditions. So in this case, similar to other minor variance applications, municipal taxes be paid to date, construction in substantial compliance with the plan submitted with the minor variance application, and that the existing vegetation on the property be preserved and enhanced as much as possible.
Thank you. So we have nobody participating virtually via Zoom. There is nobody in attendance for this application, so I declare the public portion of the meeting closed. Do any members of the committee require further clarification or wish to provide comments on this application? Seeing as there's none, I'm going to call for a motion. We have a motion before us, COA 2025-056, moved by member Kish, second by member Hawkins, that staff report D25-038 be received. And further, that minor variance application A-24-25 be approved, subject to the conditions included as attachment 5 to staff report D25-038. I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor, we are carried. The hearing for that application is closed. We're going to proceed. So with township staff, introduce the application and report on any written response to the notice circulated for E3, which is an application for consent identified as B-13-22, B-14-22, and B-15-22.
Thank you, Chair. These concurrent consent applications deal with lands located at 4500, 4540, and 4580 Bella Vista Trail. This slide here just sort of summarizes the proposed lot fabric. Essentially, right now, there are 3 existing lots. Each of the lots is subject to one of these corresponding consent applications, which in essence seek to divide each lot into half. So 3 lots right now, 1 new lot proposed from each of those for a resulting total of 6 shoreline residential lots. The table on screen here describes the frontage and area of the proposed lots. The frontage and area of each severed and retained parcel does comply with the minimum required frontage and area as established in the township zoning bylaw. And just noted on screen here, following the giving of notice of this application, the applicants have requested deferral of these applications to allow them to revise the applications to include requests for rights of way to establish legal access from Bella Vista Trail over the subject lands to ensure that legal and appropriate access can be provided to the private road from each of the subject lots. In terms of correspondence received, there was no comments or objections from the clerk's office, the Public Works or Fire and Emergency Services departments. The building department advised of no objections related to this application and just advised that building permits would be required prior to the construction of anything on the lands. Further, the township's septic inspector did review a memo and sewage system design information that was provided as part of the applications. Based on their review, there was no concerns for these severances from a septic standpoint, noting that each of the lots are large enough to accommodate and meet the minimum setbacks required for private sewage systems. And just again, a reminder that a building permit would be required prior to any of that. There were 4 letters of support received from neighboring property owners at 1451, 4204, 4278, and 1437 East Shore Road. Additionally, we did receive comments from the County of Simcoe District School Board advising that as the lands do not have frontage on or direct access to a publicly maintained road, the county the Simcoe County Student Transportation Consortium cannot guarantee direct bus service to service this development. And that should a consent agreement be entered into, the school board has requested 2 conditions being inserted dealing with matters related to purchase and sale agreements, essentially just notifying the property owners that there is no guarantee that a bus would pick up a student and that there's room in the local school to accommodate any potential pupils. Enbridge Gas also commented, stating that they had no objections to the application, however, reserved the right to amend or remove development conditions and reminded the applicant that it's their responsibility to verify where existing gas services encroach onto the properties. Lastly, the County of Simcoe also provided comments stating that in principle, they do not object to this proposal, provided that it is assessed within the appropriate framework of municipal land use planning policies. The county acknowledges that the local policies may offer additional guidance regarding whether future lot creation is consistent with the desired rural character and is locally appropriate. The county goes on to highlight a few different sections of their official plan, stating that the applications must be generally consistent with and in general conformity with. And then they are also reminding and flagging that the township should also be satisfied that appropriate conditions are in place to support individual on-site sewage and water services, and that the applicant can clearly demonstrate that through the applications. This is just a key map of the subject properties, sort of highlighting where they are located. So they are sort of located more at the northern tip of Gloucester Pool. East Shore Road runs up the east side of Gloucester Pool here, and then at the end it branches off into another private road called Bella Vista Trail. The East Shore Road Association has consented to the use of that roadway for access to these properties, but just for some context there. The 2024 aerial imagery, you can see here the lands are generally vacant except for the internal road network that has been constructed. This is the consent sketch that the applicants provided. The black lines outline the existing parcels and the red would be the new lot lines that are essentially splitting each lot in half. A couple photos here from the site visit. The first one here is just sort of the general character of the shoreline area of these properties. It is quite steep, but generally well vegetated along the shoreline. And then this is a picture of that internal road network that has been installed already. So as outlined within the staff report, the applicants have requested deferral of this application to allow them to revise the applications to include the request for rights of way. Township staff do not object to that request and have a recommended motion if the committee would like to see that. I will note that the applicant's agent is in attendance this evening and may wish to address the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. I now call on the applicant's agent to present any relevant information if they so choose.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of committee. My name is Bishoi Shinoda. I'm the agent on behalf of the owners for these lands and with Innovative Planning Solutions. I quickly wanted to thank staff for their help and work on this application, as well as want to note that they have covered everything. They are doing their best. We're really appreciative of their work. And in this case, we reiterate what they have said. We're seeking a deferral so that we can bring the applications back with the mechanism for establishing the legal access from Bella Vista Trail. And I'm happy to answer any questions should you have any.
Thank you very much. So would township staff have anything further to add to this application?
Thank you, but nothing further to add.
Okay. We have nobody participating virtually via Zoom this evening. There is nobody in attendance for this application, so I declare the public portion of the application closed. Do any members of the committee require further clarification or wish to provide comments on this application? Seeing none, I know we have a deferral motion. So I'm going to call on the deferral motion. Motion before us, identified as COA 2025-056, moved by member Bossy, second by member Kish, that staff report D25-3039 be received, and that in the matter of consent application B13-22, B14-22, and B15-22, that the application be deferred at the request of the applicant to a future committee of adjustment meeting to allow the applicants an opportunity to revise the applications. I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor? We are carried. So the hearing for that application is now closed. You're free to go, and we're going to move on. So would township staff briefly introduce our last application, which is E4, which is an application for consent identified as B09-25.
Thank you, Chair. As noted, the last application on our agenda this evening is consent for new lot creation affecting the lands recognized as 3455 Timberline Avenue. The subject property is located in the fully serviced West Shore settlement area where growth and development are encouraged by all applicable policy documents. The applicant in particular is seeking consent to sever one new residential building lot in the residential 1 zone. Per the applicant's request, the proposed severed lands would have an approximate frontage of 15.24 meters, about 50 feet, along Timberline Avenue with an approximate area of 836.12 square meters. The retained lands would have an approximate frontage of 23.77 meters along Timberline Avenue with a remaining lot area of 1,304 square meters. We have received some correspondence with respect to this application. As noted in the staff report, the property is located with intake protection zone 2 of the West Shore Municipal Drinking Water System. The township's risk management official has reviewed for compliance with the Clean Water Act and has stated no objections and that no additional notices or requirements from the risk management official would be required, nor do any policies of the South Georgian Bay Simcoe Source Protection Plan apply to this application. Further, Enbridge Gas has stated no objections to the proposal. However, they reserve the right to amend or remove development conditions, and it's the responsibility of the applicant to verify the existing gas service does not encroach on more than one property. The building department has stated no objections to the application to create a new lot, and when the lot is to be developed, the applicant at that time will need to meet all requirements of the building code prior to any construction. Of particular relevance to this application, the Public Works Department did participate in a pre-consultation and at that time did advise that capacity exists for the subject lands to facilitate the creation of one single detached dwelling with a total of 1 dwelling unit within. And they have stated that given that Timberline is a local road with relatively road traffic and speed, Public Works would not object to a new entrance along Timberline, facilitating the creation of the lot. The details and the specifics of the entrance design would need to be dealt with through an entrance permit application following a decision on the application. Pursuant to the comments provided by the Public Works Department, staff have included a recommended condition that speaks to this point. The Public Works Department has also indicated that the driveway must have a 1.5 meter setback to the lot line and to the fire hydrant. And the driveway shall meet and connect to Timberline Avenue at a perpendicular angle to avoid confusion on any road limits. And we did receive a comment from a member of the public, a property owner along Timberline Avenue, has stated their only concern would be the distance of the proposed driveway to the fire hydrant. The Public Works Department has already preemptively sort of addressed that concern, stating that that would be something that would be confirmed and reviewed through the entrance permit process. But no additional comments or objections were received with respect to this application. I can go through an overview of the application now. However, the property owner is in attendance and may wish to address the committee with any additional information. As shown on screen, the subject property is located within the fully serviced West Shore settlement area along Timberline Avenue, sort of at the 90-degree bend along Timberline leading to Grand Tamarack Crescent. The subject property is currently developed with a single detached dwelling, and the applicant seeks to sever the vacant portion of the property to facilitate the creation of one new lot. As shown on the screen here, this is an approximation of the proposed lot creation, with the existing dwelling being maintained on the retained lands and the vacant lands being severed off to facilitate that lot creation. And some site photos taken of the subject property. So this is the existing dwelling located on the lands, and then to the right of the dwelling would be where the new lot would be located. Again, this is just a closer image of where that new lot would be created. There are conditions that speak to it. It looks like there's presently some recreational vehicles parked on this portion of the property, which is permitted. Just if you're creating a new lot, they would need to be returned to a vacant condition essentially. So that is included as part of the recommended conditions. As outlined in the staff report, the proposed lot creation appears to satisfy the provincial planning statement as well as the official plans and township zoning bylaw. The proposed lot is compliant with the minimum lot requirements of the residential 1 zone. And as outlined by the Public Works Department, there appears to be capacity for 1 single detached dwelling containing a single dwelling unit to facilitate this lot creation. And subject to the recommended conditions, staff do not have any objections to the recommended provisional approval of the application. Thank you.
Perfect. Would the applicant like to address the committee with any new or relevant information? Okay, so we're moving on. So do township staff have anything further to add?
Thank you, Chair. I can run through the recommended conditions for provisional approval. A lot of them are pretty standard, the committee's pretty familiar with any new lot creation, being the reference plan be prepared of the severed parcel and reviewed by the township before it's registered. A copy of the in preparation draft deed so we can issue the consent certificate. Municipal taxes be paid in full up to the date of request of the consent certificate. That the provisionally approved lands be brought into a vacant condition, just to demonstrate compliance with the township zoning bylaw. Again, that's just with respect to kind of just moving those vehicles off of what is to be proposed as a vacant lot. That the applicant obtains an entrance permit onto Timberline Avenue for the severed parcel to the satisfaction of the Public Works Department. That the applicant applies for a water and sewer connection and pays the actual cost in a deposit. That a payment of 5% in lieu of parkland dedication be paid for the severed lot. That the applicant agrees that all fees and disbursements, if any incurred by the township, are the onus of the applicant, and that the conditions set out herein be completed within 2 years of the date of the decision. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We have nobody registered via Zoom. We have nobody in attendance. So I declare the public portion of the application closed. Do any members of the committee require further clarification or wish to provide comments on this application? Member Bossy.
Question to staff through the chair. A vulnerability score of 5.6, what's the range? Is that good? Is that bad? What is it? Like, I don't.
Through the chair to Member Bossy. So that just speaks to the types of uses that could be permitted on the property essentially. So the intake protection zone has intake protection zone 1, which is the most vulnerable, and intake protection zone 2, which is kind of outside of that, which is a lesser vulnerability. Essentially what happens when we receive these types of applications within any of the intake protection zones or wellhead protection area, the risk management official reviews it and tells us what the vulnerability score is. And in this particular case, residential uses are generally a lower kind of risk. Oftentimes we could see it being a larger concern if it was a commercial use or something along those lines where chemicals might be used. So the risk management official has kind of stated the vulnerability score wouldn't conflict with the proposed residential use of the lands.
Member Bossy.
I'll do 2 questions and one to staff. When you say parkland dedication fees, 5% of what?
Through the township staff.
Thank you. Through the chair to Member Bossy. So that's a standard condition that's actually applied by the Planning Act to any new lot creation. So it's 5% of the value of the lands the day before the lands are severed. So essentially this requires applicants to have an appraisal of the lands done, of which the township would then review and determine what that 5% value is of cash to be paid dedicated to parkland.
Member Bossy.
One more. Aerial image attachment 2. Looks like there's something, I'm going to say south of the one before that. Yeah. Just to the south, there's a structure or something, or what is that?
That is. That has been moved closer to the house now. The trailer both sitting out. The shelter lodging. Taken down during the summer and put up in winter. So it's beside the house now with that trailer in it and the boat. But it's retaining property that's retaining.
Okay. So the answer was a temporary shelter. That's for YouTube. Yeah. Yeah. All good. Is that all the comments? We are good. Just going to call for a motion. The motion before us identified as COA 2025-059, moved by member Kish, second by member Bossy, that staff report D25-040 be received, and that the matter of consent application B-09-25, the application be provisionally approved, subject to the recommended conditions included as attachment 4 to staff report D25-040. And a call for a vote. All those in favor, we are carried. Going to move on. So we're going to call for a motion for adjournment. The motion before us identified as COA 2025-060, moved by member Hawkins, second by member Bossy, that the Committee of Adjustment be adjourned at 7:06 p.m. on Tuesday, November 18th.